the work is hard, the work is slow, the work is deep, like a lot more like a crock pot than a microwave, you would say, right? It just takes time. But it's also worth it, right? You get glimpses of someone coming alive in trust in ways that they hadn't before, and that's pretty cool.
Welcome to the Source podcast. We've decided to start doing some long form videos to really give you some of the background behind the Source, that the Source is a lot bigger than my face that you see often on the little reels we've been making. But there's a lot of people that make up our work here at the Source. And so today, we're going to start with one of our first interviews of one of our people behind the scenes. And that individual is Bradley Knott. Bradley Knott is serving as our Mentorship Director. And I'll allow him to speak a little bit into that, and we'll get into some questions about Brad. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, so this is one of our first ones in an interview style, so we'll see how it goes. But really, my desire is to convey the heart of why we do what we do. You know, why are you here? Why are you working here? What motivates Bradley Knott to work for the Source? Those kind of things are what we'll be getting into. So first, let's just start with your background. So why don't you tell our people a little bit about yourself?
Well, this is actually my third go-around with the Source. My understanding is that I was the very first employee the Source ever had. That was back in 2012 or so. Yeah. And back then we were mowing lawns, and I was working with some of the kids from Juvie who were looking to fulfill some community service hours. And that lasted for at least one summer, I think maybe just one summer. And then following that time period working for the Source, I was the youth pastor at a local church for about 6 years up till 2019. Following that stint, I did work for the Source in the homes, working with our kids for several months, kind of winter of 2019 into COVID craziness of 2020. And then I went back to school to earn my Master's of Divinity. And following that, I reached out to Chris and said, hey, what are you guys doing at the Source? Do you have any position that I could help with? And so I find myself here now as Mentorship Director.
Yeah. That's awesome. You know, it's going way back. So this is probably 2012, I think, somewhere in there, 2013, when you came on to help me working with at-risk youth that are part of the court systems. And I remember some of those kids that we were working with back then, and just the interactions that we had during those seasons. You know, and our history for you and I goes back even a lot further than that, from when I was a young man and you were young. Right. And just goes all the way back to there, to where we've seen that our paths and the direction of life have crossed and have been kind of woven together to serve humanity, to serve people in the name of Jesus and to reach people. And so it's been really, really cool. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, you know, family, you know, things like that you'd be comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I was married in 2012, December 2012, and Victoria, my wife, and myself desired to grow our family. So for several years, we were struggling with some infertility, and we knew even before we had been married that we desired to adopt at some point. We had that discussion that, you know, it would be wonderful to adopt at some point. And in our minds, that was probably after we, you know, had a family naturally. But the Lord had other plans, and so we were excited to adopt our first child we started fostering in 2020, right in the middle of all the COVID stuff. So he was welcomed into our family, and it was a really sweet time. We got him lockdown week, actually, so that was like really unique. Our relationship with like the state and with, you know, birth parents and all of that was maybe a little bit different than most people's experience, because we couldn't really have any contact. We were, you know, on the phone, or we were holding Jacob up out the window so that the social worker could make sure that he was still living, and then we move on. And so, Jacob was the name of our first son, and we adopted him officially about a year and a half after we started fostering. And then we have also adopted 2 little girls in the last handful of years. And so now we have 3. 3 little guys, and love them with all our hearts.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, one of the things that shocks me about when I was doing a little research, I didn't really notice this when with who works for the Source. And in our office, the people that run the programs, the people that, you know, oversee other staff, there's 7 of us that have either adopted children or take care of grandchildren. And there's 7 of us that do that,
Yeah,
7
pretty amazing.
families.
Yeah.
Out of our team of there's 12 of us here in the office, and a couple of them are still children, still young in their early 20s. And so they're not part of that crowd. But everybody else who's in the parenting age has children that are not biological.
Right.
And so
it's more than a job, I think, for, all of us coming together is it's more than a job. We love the mission, we love the vision, and then that, translates into our whole lives as well, right? We're drawn together with like hearts and like minds to, serve the foster care children, and we do that professionally, yes, but then it's also personal.
Yeah,
That's pretty
and
cool.
there's this beautiful thing that it's basically called the spirit of adoption. And as a follower of Jesus, our God's desire is to put the lonely in family.
Right.
And it's really cool just hearing that part of your story of you and your wife, and you're like, let's look into foster adopting. And that's the same thing that happened to Zara and I. We said, okay, we're going to adopt 1 child, and 6 children later, 3 bio, 3 adopted. All my children. There's no difference between bio or adopted. They're all my kids. But we were going to start with 1. But God's desire is to put the lonely in family. And He's just looking for hearts that are open to that.
Yes.
So, all right. So let me ask you a few questions. Got to put on my reading glasses so I can read. So you've worked in ministry, you've adopted kids, and now you're helping to lead the Source. How have those different experiences shaped the way that you approach working with kids today?
Yeah, 3 very different contexts. And what's interesting, there are nuances in each of the contexts, but when you get down to it, what a child desires from a parent or a pastor or a mentor or a guardian is the same, really, right? Kids want people who they can trust. They want to know that there's hope in their life.
Yeah.
And so even though the demographics are different, like with the kids I worked with at the church as a pastor, with my own kids or the kids that I'm working with now through mentorship, the goal that I have is to make sure that they know that there's hope for their future, that no matter where they are now, no matter where they have come from, that the future can be bright.
Yeah.
Right. There is hope for the future. And so for kids in the church, that might look one way, and for kids that we're working with now, that might look another way. But what everyone needs to know is that you have an adult who loves you, cares for you, and is trustworthy, and that the future has hope.
Yeah.
That just because you've come from a certain place doesn't mean that that's the end of the story.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's we as human beings have this inherent need to be loved.
Right.
I've never met a person that doesn't have a need to be loved.
Right.
It's just part of human nature. And with our kids that are in our care, so many of them with their experiences, they haven't been loved from all the way from in utero. They come with in utero drug exposure, and then severe neglect and abuse when they're early years of childhood. And so when you're coming in a position to sow that love, do you find it sometimes difficult for it to be received?
Yeah, so it's a different level of work between these three contexts that I've primarily worked in. The work to show or convince or lead a child that we work with to trust is a lot harder. It takes consistency. It takes intentionality. And so you spend a lot more time building that foundation that wasn't built the natural way, right?
Yeah.
So a healthy in utero experience, a healthy birth, a healthy first several years. And so at this point, we are trying to rebuild some of these foundations. And that takes time and that takes effort and it takes consistency. And so it's a longer process than any of us might hope for.
Yeah.
Right? Some people come into the work excited about making a difference and hoping to change the world in the first few months. And that's wonderful. That's passion and that's motivation for us. But what we recognize is after you've been here a couple months and this kid's life hasn't been changed in the way that you would have hoped, that you are still planting seeds, that you're still consistent, and you are still moving this child toward a place of hope and toward a place of trust.
Yeah.
So the work is hard The work is slow. The work is deep, like a lot more like a crock pot than a microwave, you would say, right? It just takes time. But it's also worth it, right? You get glimpses of someone coming alive in trust in ways that they hadn't before, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, when kids come to us, I mean, I've seen, 25 previous placements. So we're getting a child that comes in, 15 years old, been in the system their entire childhood.
Right.
And they've been to 25 places that said, hey, we're glad you're here. We love you as a son. Kicked out.
Right.
Oh, next house. We're glad you're here. We love you. We care about you as a son. Kicked out.
Right.
Then they come to us. And the first things we say, we're glad you're here. We love you. And that child ingrained in them is this is just another place that's going to kick me out soon.
Right.
And it takes that consistency that you're speaking of to continually sow those seeds, to continually make the effort to show them what love really is, and hold them accountable, right? Just don't tolerate a bunch of nonsense, but help them grow, help them learn good behaviors and things to help them succeed in life, but also showing them that love is consistent and it takes time. So back on with the glasses, just a second. All right, when you first started here, what surprised you the most about working with the kids that we serve?
I think what surprised me in a way is not so much the behaviors of the kids, which I know can be surprising to some when you come into this context and you're surprised maybe at the level of behavior. I think what surprised me more is reading back over files of kids who we are working with and having my eyes opened to where these kids are coming from. And the level of support that we need, the level of trauma that they've experienced. And so I think that would be the biggest surprise. You recognize it as a reality getting into this work, that these kids come from really difficult places, these kids come from hard places, and then when you look back over, like you said, the 25 placements, the significant abuse, the traumatic events, and your heart is broken, and at the same time your heart is opened to serving these kids with excellent care, right? With perseverance, so that we're not another one of those places that says, we love you, we care for you, welcome, and then, oh, you're too much for us, right? And that can happen. That happens every once in a while, but our goal is to continue to pursue and to continue to build that trust. So I think the depth of trauma has been surprising.
That's shocking.
Shocking, yes, and heartbreaking.
Yeah. When we get our packets of information on the kids, you get the whole history of their life. And my heart just breaks for them so often of like, oh man, this kid has had such a rough start in life. No fault of their own. It's been super traumatic. But one of the things that I've come accustomed to saying is like, if they're not dead and buried, there's hope.
Absolutely.
There's hope for these kids. And every kid, even though they're hardened by the experiences in their life, they might be presenting an anger, rebellion, maybe have a chemical dependency problem. But there's a chink in the armor of every one of these youth. And I love it when we're able to, for our staff to be able to find that chink in the armor and say, hey, I can get through to this kid right here. This is a soft spot. And we start being able to apply love and unconditional support to those areas. And you can see that armor start to just, starts fading, and the kid's like, well, maybe this time will be different. And I love it when it comes to fruition and it is different for them.
Yeah, so even through like the mentorship program, that's part of the goal, is to identify some of those weak spots in their armor, or some spots where their guard is down. Right? For some it's sports maybe, or for some it's video games or a certain show. And so you try lots of stuff, right? Kind of scattershot. Hey, how's school? Or what's your favorite subject? What clubs are you participating in? And when you find that point of common interest, that's kind of the place where a relationship can start to grow.
Exactly.
Right? You start to talk about that sports team. And when you're talking about that thing, it seems like all the other stuff sort of fades away for that moment in
That's
time.
awesome.
Right? And you can start to build on your love for the Seahawks or your love for some video game.
Yeah.
And
Even though that love for that video game is not really there.
No. And so what you have to do then is be committed to go and do a little research on your own so that you can have a conversation with that kid about this video game that you've never heard of.
Yeah. And
you're speaking the same language for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's really amazing when that can happen. It doesn't always happen quickly, but generally you try to find that place of, you find that place where you both have a common interest, or you find that place of their interest that you're willing to enter into that world, and something pretty cool can happen.
Yeah. So Brad, I know this about you. You are a mentor at heart. You love people. What do you think young people today need the most from adults who show up in their lives?
Probably all of the things that have been mentioned. If we were to package it together in one answer, it's like an adult who is willing to show up consistently, even through the difficult times, even through the pushback. You get a lot of pushback from the kids we work with the first several times. And for some, the first several times, like you show up to encourage, to care, and there's a certain level of pushback. But for those who are willing to continue through the pushback, there's relationship on the other side. And so first I would say consistency and perseverance. And then also those who are willing to be, and this goes along with it, but those who are trustable, right? Who enter into the child's world, not as someone who's like coming down on them, or not as someone who is just trying to like fix them, but someone who is just building a relationship of trust. And when you get down to that place, then they come alive, and you find yourself coming alive as well, as you both are really growing together. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I use a couple sayings that might seem kind of harsh, but you get a little desensitized when you work with kids that are in behavioral programs. I can just say I've been working with youth for almost 3 decades, and I never got assaulted by a kid until I opened up a group home. And I worked with kids in juvenile detention who are in there for felony assault, murder, all sorts of hardcore kids. Not one of them assaulted me. But when I opened up a group home, it didn't take too long before I became the target of their frustration. And and so it can weigh on you, right? And one of the things that I think is important for us to realize is that I don't take things personal. Most of their actions are coming from a place of trauma and a place of being hurt. And, if you ever seen an animal that's wounded, if you try to approach them, it's dangerous for the person approaching that animal that's wounded. And sometimes our kids are so hurt that the way they protect themselves is to lash out and try to hurt other people. Right. And it takes some thick skin for our people who work in this area to be willing to, put that aside. So I remember one time a kid hit me in the head with a picture frame. I walked into his room and he just chucked it at me like a dart, and it glances off my forehead. Blood starts pouring down. He gets in trouble with the police. But the next morning, I got to wake him up for school because he didn't go to jails, but he just got a minor charge on him. And I remember waking him up, like I could be mad that he hurt me. And I just, when I woke him up, I said, "Hey, it's time to get up." And he's like, and I said, "And I'm not holding that against you." I'm like, there's consequences for your actions, but for me, I forgive you for hurting me. And he turns over and he says, "Chris, I'm sorry I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I was upset. It was an accident. I just let my anger get the best of me." And so you have to have kind of thick skin in the work we do, because our kids are armored up. But like we were saying a little bit ago, is that there is a chink in that armor that we can find to get to a soft, pliable heart in there. So
recognizing, like you said, where behaviors are coming from is so important. Like recognizing the motivation of a behavior can help you have compassion for that behavior. And so all of these behaviors are coming from a place of significant trauma, significant insecurity. This is their coping mechanism, right? I can be in control when I'm punching the walls, when I'm punching you, when I'm yelling, I'm in control. And they are desiring security and control. And so our job is to help teach them that there are different ways, right? help teach them that this is a place where you don't have to have your armor up, that you don't have to act out of the wound, but you can act out of trust and out of love.
Yeah, so good. All right, so next question is, do you have a unique way of connecting with people? What's your approach when you first meet a young person in our care?
It's unique depending on the kid, right? So like today I met a new kid up at Birch.
Yeah, I met him today too.
And really connected with him, really think I'm going to enjoy hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he wanted me to know that he was a pretty cool kid.
Yeah.
That that he's a cool kid, and that he often likes running away from placements. And so I just asked him about some of this running away, because he said most of the time I'd be gone from a placement already, and he's been with us like 4 days.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Whoa, that's really, really fast." I'm like, "Where would you go?" And he's like, "Oh, I would head over, to such and such a city." And I said, "Oh, how would you get there?" And so he starts talking about how he would grab a bike and he would go and all of this. And so then we're able to have a conversation about, his motivations for running away. Mm-hmm. And then also like he enjoys biking, and it kind of opens up a whole conversation that, this kid is just trying to communicate to me that he has some power, he's pretty cool, that he could leave whenever he wants, but he's actually kind of liking this place.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty cool. And like I said, I think I'll enjoy kind of getting to know him. So it's a case by case. If the kid's really quiet, really shy, sit there and try and connect with them on that level. Yeah. This kid was not quiet or shy, and so I try to kind of meet their energy and engage on that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's it reminded me of when we first started. It was probably 2 years in, and I took this new boy, and literally he comes in the door, looks around, and he's like, "I'm out." Oh, yeah. And he was gone for like 3 days. Yeah. and then when I found him, he's like, "Why are you looking for me?" And I'm like, "Bro, you're part of our family. We want you to be part of our family." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Nobody does that. Why are you out searching for me, making sure I'm okay?" Right. And it's like, because you matter to us,
Well, that's what I told this kid. He said, "Oh, I'd run," and Birch is kind of out in the woods.
Yeah,
said, "Well, where would you go? Like, I'd walk with you for a little bit or something." And then he said, "Well, I'll get a bike and go." And I said, "Oh man, well, our cars are like way faster than your bike.
Yeah, exactly.
We would be able to get you." He's like, "I don't know, I'm pretty fast." I'm like, "Oh, we find you."
Yeah. And he doesn't know the area yet. But
no.
Very resourceful young man. Yeah. So, but it's just cool. He's already surpassed his usual stay at a place because he feels comfortable. And I just met him today, and I'm like, he's a very likable young man. I can see that.
And the reality is that's not atypical for us. Like, we've had kids who will stay with us, and I recognize some of it's probably environmental, like where are you going to go around the middle of the woods, but then also they get connected to people, and whether or not they'll say it with their words, they feel like they're a part of something.
Oh yeah.
They recognize that people love them and care for them.
Yeah.
And so that's been.
It's even cool. We have a lot of kids that they're in their 20s now that came through our program, never got adopted by a family, but who do they call? They call us.
Yep.
All the time. They blow up my Facebook. They watch our videos, all these videos. The kids make comments on them.
Yep.
And that's probably the most powerful thing that I see is like when the last one I had a little bit ago, one of our boys is like, "That's my home. Those are my people," and at the time he didn't really care for us too much.
No, right.
And then fast forward a little bit, and he's like, "I've never had people care about me more."
Yeah.
It's very beautiful. So, all right, let's talk about leadership for a second.
Okay.
What does good leadership look like in a place like this?
Good leadership. I think good leadership can look different depending on the context. A place like this, good leadership is from the heart. We want to make sure that we're keeping the main thing with clarity. What are we desiring to do here at the Source? We're desiring to serve foster care kids who need love, who need acceptance. And so what we're trying to do, as people who are trying to lead in this space, is to show the state or other institutions that there is a way to do this family style, to do this with care, and to do this with love. And so when we're trying to lead, we're doing it with clarity and we're doing it with heart. And like Jesus talks about the greatest way to lead is the way of a servant.
Yeah.
And so we're coming, and our goal is to serve these kids, right? To wash their feet, to get on their level, and in that way we are going to their place in order to lead them to a more hope-filled place.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, that can be difficult work, but that is the work that we've chosen to participate in and is very worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely the hardest work that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Not an easy job.
Right.
So, but totally worthwhile. What do you wish people understood about the kids in our homes?
That thing we mentioned earlier about the motivations, I think is really critical. Recognizing that behaviors are a product of maybe the same motivation that we all have, but we have learned to receive that need in a more healthy way.
Yeah.
So we all want love, we all want care, we all want acceptance. And the way that a healthy person receives those things looks a lot different than the way that someone who has come from an unhealthy place receives those things. And so not to write kids off who are trying to meet needs in an unhealthy way, but to recognize that what they need, what they are seeking is love and acceptance. And so when you see a behavior that is motivated by the desire for connection, but it is an unhealthy behavior, step into that place, recognizing that behavior is not okay, but you can still provide connection by staying close, even in the middle of that difficult behavior.
Yeah. I don't know. So many of the youth that have come through our program have their need for attention. They don't know how to get attention on a positive scale. So what they do is they have bad behaviors because that causes attention. And so it's exactly that. You're trying to show them like, hey, that attention is available there for you in a healthy way.
Right.
We care about you. We want to spend time with you. We want to know you. You don't need to punch holes in the wall to get my attention.
Right.
And so through that consistency is how we really can start breaking through on that area. So, all right. What keeps you going on the hard days?
Oh, what keeps me going on the hard days? I think it's these moments, it's these glimmers, right? That you think back to these times when you've had breakthrough with certain kids. My family keeps me going on the hard days, right? It's like going home and being greeted by kids who love you and who run up to you, and you think, okay, like I want that for the kids that I work with as well, right? Like, my kids are generally in a pretty healthy place, and so they know how to receive love and they know how to receive attention in a healthy way most of the time. And I want to see that also for our kids, right? And so you desire for the kids we work with, even when it's hard, to experience that and recognize that my hard days are worth it if we're moving toward that.
Yeah. And in this work, there are hard days.
Yeah.
I mean, it just happens. And I can think about a while back, I had one of my kids who I invested so much in, and so many of our staff and team invested a lot in this young man, and he fell off the rails. Right when he turned 18, he took off from the placement, went back to his biological family, got wrapped up in drugs, and we were all grieving deeply. And at the same time, I have another boy who is like a son to me. I got him right after a near suicide. He lived at the Source for 3 years, and then Zara, my wife, and I, we took him in as a foster kid for a bit, and I have a really good relationship with his family now and see him all the time. And so in those really hard times, like at that moment, I was so sad about the other boy, but I was looking at like, instead of saying, man, why do this? What's the point? There are those kids that we get through too, and you're like, oh, he's the reason. If I only reach one kid, that young man is totally worth it. Right. And so having that perspective is really good for us. All right. So if someone's thinking about working at the Source and supporting what we do, what would you want them to know?
If someone wants to work at the Source, I would encourage them to do so. I
so
think,
would I.
Hey, sign up, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would encourage them to explore it, right? If there is that internal pull, I believe it's from the Lord pulling you toward mission, pulling you toward His heart for foster kids, and so if that's in the source or if that's somewhere else, to recognize that pull and pursue it.
Yeah.
Now, we believe that Source is doing good work and we'd love to have people on the team. And so what I would tell them is that this is a good place to explore some of that, right? If you don't know what to do with that, you have that internal pull to, I know God's heart is for placing the lonely in families, and I know that we have an epidemic of foster kids in Washington State and in Idaho, and you don't really know what to do with that. This is a good place to explore that, and at least get connected to people who may be able to point you in the right direction as to how you can explore that pull that you feel on the inside.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'm a firm believer that the experiences that we have in life can be used for the good in our future, right? So many of us, we don't have the perfect upbringing. Some of us had a lot better upbringing than others. Mine was fairly rough. But what I've seen in my work with at-risk youth, with juvenile offenders, and now foster care kids, is that the things that were meant to destroy me way back in the day have been used for good.
Right.
And and so if you desire to, if you desire to use your experiences in life and things like that, we would love to have you. So, all right, this is my last question for you, sir. Looking ahead, what is the hope for the Source that you see over the next few years?
It's to continue to impact kids, right? It's that, like we're talking about leadership, it's keeping that main thing the main thing, to continue to drive toward making an impact, to taking a bite out of the epidemic of in Washington State, like how many foster care kids there are, to do our part to continue to make a dent in those statistics. Yeah. And when you look at the big statistics, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like it's too much. But what we can do at the Source is to continue to serve the kids that have come into our care, to continue to do that in an excellent way, to continue to expand, to continue to try and make a bigger dent. And so the hope for the Source would be that we keep trudging down the path, at whatever pace the Lord is calling us to, and we can make an impact in these kids' lives, and hopefully many kids, right? Hundreds of kids. Yeah. It's already been hundreds of kids, and hopefully we can grow it to hundreds and thousands of kids who are impacted by the love and care they receive here. That would be my hope.
That's really good. And I just want to say that I'm grateful to have you on our team, bro.
Thanks.
You're a huge asset for the Source in the season of your life and in the season of the development of the organization, and just very grateful for, it goes way back in time, but really just grateful for you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for spending time answering some of these interview questions, and we look forward to what's ahead.
Of course.
All right. Thank you.